So this leads us into stakeholder communications. Essentially, you need to keep these folks informed. What information content, what detail, what format, what frequency, what language, what complexity. A lot of stakeholders are often intimidated by technical information. They show up at public meetings and they have great reams of technical information. If you need to deliver information at their level of knowledge, and don't scare them with technical brochures that they don't understand. Keep them informed is also a way to manage their expectations, as it avoids surprises. Also, the frequency is important. Don't barrage people with tons of information every week. Identify when they want the information, at what level they want the information, and via what medium. Often if you're dealing with rural communities, they don't have high-speed bandwidth. So if you're putting maps of data up on the web to distribute information, those folks won't be able to get it. So you have to be cognizant of the fact that not everybody has a high-speed bandwidth in which they can download information. Some rural folks are not comfortable with computers. So perhaps a direct mailing would be more appropriate to those folks, or perhaps a publication or a news release in one of their local magazines. For instance, the agricultural community has lots of their specific agricultural newsletters and papers and associations that you could distribute information through. You need to manage stakeholders closely. Have stakeholders' participation and roles well defined and agreed upon. Do not let the strong stakeholders hijack the project. Remember, the project sponsor has ultimate authority and responsibility. Do not allow rumor or heresy. Have frequent, direct, and clear communications. Most problems with large public projects is that rumors get out there. And you need to have your ear to the ground, sense those rumors, and immediately be responding to them by putting out news releases or having interviews with local reporters that can dispel these rumors quickly. Use meetings as well as one-on-one discussions, especially with key stakeholders. Keep them involved in the process. Involvement begets commitment. Stakeholder communications happens throughout the project. So it just doesn't happen while you're defining and planning the project. It also happens during the implementation phases, the commissioning phase, as well as the operations phase. So project communications just doesn't stop after you've done the planning phase. It needs to continue throughout all of the different phases of the project. In formulating your stakeholder communication strategy, ask the stakeholders, what information is it that they need, what format do they need it in, and in what frequency. Don't make any promises to deliver it, but you need to assess and identify what their information needs are. Otherwise, you're going to be creating a whole bunch of information, distributing a bunch of information that they may not want or in an appropriate fashion. So to do this, we've developed a stakeholder consultation process. The reason we've needed to do this is because we've got so many of them, we've got so many categories of them, and we needed a logical process of consultation to limit the number of iterations we needed to address all of these stakeholder requirements. Existing consultation and communication process needs to be adapted specifically to the project's needs, but we provided you with a template. The consultation process outlined next should result in the fewest iterations of your communications. Again, a copy of this is also in your manual. So walk through this process. I'm not going to talk to it. I think you can follow it through, take a few minutes, take a particular stakeholder and walk through this consultation process. You notice that we've identified or categorized it into the residual stakeholders as well as the temporary stakeholders. So you're going to focus on the residual ones first and then move over to this temporary. So this is a process. It's a guide. Circumstances may override it. Planning is required to set consultation priorities and goals so as to have only one primary set of consultations per group. To minimize the risk of project failure, consultations need to be done before the project scope is finalized. Cannot emphasize this point. If you have not done this, then you are missing scope, and that's going to come up later on in the implementation phase, and either your project is going to get stopped by a stakeholder, and there are numerous examples of this around the world where stakeholders that were not identified early in the planning phase came out of the woodwork and literally shut down multi-billion-dollar projects. So don't underestimate their power. Stakeholder communications planning should be sufficiently advanced to help implement the consultation process. So you will have had to have gone through these processes, exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, to help implement this consultation process. Because otherwise you could be consulting with the wrong stakeholders. Stakeholder communications continues throughout the consultation process, project implementation, project commissioning, and often beyond. So just because the project's over doesn't mean you can stop consulting with the stakeholders. In your particular project, this may be a critical aspect of the project success criteria. Considerations with regards to content, depth, frequency, media, and distribution channels. Looking at the content, how technical it is, whether there's cost involved, whether there's schedule, performance, environmental issues identified, political, economic situations. Depth. You need to summarize information because there are some folks that only need high-level information. You may also need to have summary with commentary explanations because some folks are detail-oriented and they will need to have the additional details. Frequency. Well, you need to decide whether it's going to be daily or weekly or monthly or when needed or asked for. Media, obviously, written reports, audio records, video records, newsletters, print, images, sound. These all need to be considered, as well as your distribution channel. How are you going to distribute this information? Through meetings, presentations, through the mail, through email, through newsletters, through press releases, discussion groups, feedback meetings, video conferencing, radio announcements, TV, interest group meetings, internet sites, newsletters, through the press. You're going to need to figure that all out. Decisions regarding content, depth, etc. are important because in producing directed and satisfactory communications, it may be aided by questions such as who do we want to reach, why we want to reach them, what is their need and perspective, what type of communications will get their attention and keep them feeling included. I can give you an example here. I'm working on a species at risk project in a local county in eastern Ontario in Canada. We identified that there were specific species within the region that nobody knew about that needed protected. So we thought about that, and we had a focus group meeting with a variety of different sectors. So we had developers, we had agricultural folks, we had urban folks, we had rural folks. It clearly became apparent that the agricultural community was feeling very, I guess they were feeling very pressured that this was their fault. So we decided to target the agricultural community. So we had focus groups meeting with them and identified that they were being put out in the press as being the bad guys with regards to species at risk. and show examples of where the agricultural community was actually helping species at risk. Well, by doing that, the agricultural community quickly came on side, despite the fact that we were actually associated initially by them as being government. Now they realized that we were actually going to try to help them build up a better PR image in the community, that farmers were really not against species at risk, but in fact were actually helping species at risk. So we took a negative stakeholder and turned them into positive. And our strategy there is that once the agricultural community came on side, that because of their influence within the community, it's a rural community. These folks have a lot of power. There's a lot of them involved in community activities, that they would bring urban and rural and developers on side. So there's an example of identifying who do we wanted to reach, why we wanted to reach them, and they told us what they needed and what their perspective was, and they also indicated to us the best way of communicating with them and how to get the attention of other folks in the agriculture community. And this also got them feeling included, because we included them in all the press releases. They had to approve the press releases. So stakeholder communications. To make stakeholder communications efficient, the following need to be known: the number of different reports that are required, the source of the information required to populate the reports, the ability of the project management support system to provide the information that they're looking for, the detail level that's required, the presentation of the material, the frequency or gathering and formulating of the information, the media used to communicate the information, the channel to be used to communicate this information, so that'd be website, direct mail, and the type of language, whether it's technical or common. Okay, so in conclusion, for a project to be successful, a broad view of stakeholders must be espoused, as opposed to the immediate stakeholders only. The project requirements must not be finalized until stakeholder consultations are complete and stakeholder issues resolved. You need to emphasize that. The project requirements must not be finalized until you've conducted your stakeholder consultations. Communications planning, along with stakeholder analysis, must become part of the planning process. It's not something that you're going to do in the implementation phase, because by then it's too late. You need to do it as part of your planning process rather than just focusing on the typical planning things of cost and schedule. Risks must be reduced by recognizing that all stakeholders and considering their issues. Project budgets must include allowances for all of the above, or put the project and the organization in jeopardy. Thank you.